Well, can I introduce you, MJ?
Of course.
You might want to turn off the camera. You'll be blushing for sure.
Oh.
So MJ, she used to be the broker for Allison James when I was with Allison James a few years back. And then she went on, how many agents did you have then under you?
250.
How many?
250.
Okay. And then she went to another large, one of the top producing teams in the country. So she knows her shit very well. And if I ever have something that I don't remember, that I don't know, MJ gets a call and she every time answers the phone. So now she's working with Escrow Spectrum in Temecula, but they pretty much can handle, anywhere. And they are like on the ball, on the money every time. Never have issues, just great service. And you get MJ to boot. Bonus. I like your office in the background there.
Thank you, my work office. Home office.
Your
my fake office.
I'm having problems with your mic. Can everybody hear her?
I am direct wired for this purpose, so I feel, and I can hear you guys perfectly. So I'm going to blame you, Steve.
Really? Can everybody hear her?
I did.
Yeah, a little echoing. I'm sorry.
So the first 6 months or so I did Zooming, yep. I was not direct wired and I was dropping out a lot, and I finally had somebody come in, and so I haven't had that problem since.
I took him out to go potty.
Okay, there we go. I'm muted, Krista. I muted Allison. MJ?
Yeah. You ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Jane. I'm the sales manager and the VIP service coordinator for Escrow Spectrum. This is my 42nd year in the business. My parents were brokers. I had 5 sisters. I didn't want to go straight to college, and my dad said, then you're our new receptionist at the office. And I never looked back. In the early 80s, when the interest rate went to 18%, my dad called in a favor and got me a job at Fidelity Title. And they taught me escrow, and I did escrow for 20 years. In 2000, I left escrow, was going to go be a realtor, but because of my escrow background, the broker that I moved into his office said, you have more solutions than the average person, and we'd love if you'd be our manager. So I never did. If I do 5 deals a year, it's an amazing year for me, and you will see that they're almost all have my same last name. So I never did make it fully out, but I have touched and participated in at least 10,000. I stopped counting at 10,000. At 10,000 successfully closed transactions. My specialty is problem solving. I know every trick in the book. There is no transaction I can't do. In the beginning of COVID, I was getting ready to retire, and my buddy Annie Taylor, one of the escrow officers, said, "Why let all that experience go to waste? Why don't you come out and teach for us?" And so I do the VIP notaries. You might have seen me blasting Steve's sign. We have a couple of really nice VIP services. One of them is a pre-escrow where you open at listing and we start processing your file as though it's the first 7 days of the transaction. So we have your PR, we're ordering demands, we know how much the HOAs are up front, we help you with the defensible space, I'll order your pest if you want me to. I know you guys have a fabulous transaction coordinator because I use her as well. But we do our best to get you hitting the ground running. So those first 3 days of the transaction you're already turning in solars and disclosures, and you're ready to go the moment you open a transaction. So the other service is once you're in a pre-escrow with us, and even if you don't pre-escrow with us, if it's remotely in the area, you will get me personally to go out and walk them through their escrow package and do their notary and bring it all back in. For the other areas, LA and Southern Cal, we have a couple other notaries that go out and do it. And I'm going to be announcing a couple of really great hires here shortly, but I'll spare you from that for right now. what I'm here to talk to you today about, so you guys know a year ago we got a new contract, and I went out and taught it. I taught 57 classes on the new contract because it was abused. It was a completely new one. This year we have a change that is equally as important and maybe more so. So the car forms update I'm about to give you, for those of you who are not tuned up on the things I'm about to tell you, you will be by the time we're done. And in most cases, I wind up with eyes bugging and mouths open because they really can't believe what's about to happen. So I'm going to explain for a minute, and then I'm going to run a very short 8-minute video where the CRMLS attorney is going to tell you how we got here. So I think it's the fastest way to do it. There are some lawsuits that have been filed against the National Association of Realtors for us as an industry. And that's what NAR does for all those people who don't think NAR does anything. They are the defender of the realm. And if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be independent contractors. Many laws would have crushed us as an industry by now. And right now they're doing their best to save us. I have never seen NAR lose, but I think we are going to lose this time. So so what we were, and then besides a bunch of lawsuits, we got a claim from the Department of Justice, a criminal charge as an industry for several very important things. Having a monopoly, meaning no one else can use our MLS. We shut other people out. We don't let them touch our lock boxes. And we all know why, but this creates a monopoly. For price fixing, which is the two agents deciding among themselves how much the commission is going to be, and most always the listing agent makes the decision and puts what he wants on the MLS. For steering, for some companies, big companies that will go unnamed, but they're a very well-known beginner type operation. I might as well say, it's all over the internet. Keller Williams was one of the witnesses that was deposed for this case. And he had to explain why he teaches his agents to only show properties that are at a certain commission or above, and to avoid other properties that might be very good for your client but don't pay you as much. And then all the fair housing stuff you've been hearing on that. As a country, as a nation, we are trying to get our grip around racism and fair housing. For those of you who have not followed that, the fair housing stuff, a lot of great video on Newsweek did a 5-year study, and they have video where they have an appraiser go in with white people's pictures on the wall and sitting on the shelves and things, and the house is one price. They go in again where they've been restored with a different family, a different race of family, and it turns out that the house has another whole value. They have comments like we saw come out of the LA City Council recently, where they were behind the scenes using name calling and degradation. And so all 4 of these things were Department of Justice, which is a criminal complaint against us. So without that, Steve, can you share screen? Can you share presenter for me? Now, CRMLS, the attorney is way up in the corner. It's just the way they formatted their class that day. So I apologize for that. But let's get this video running.
I'm going to hit change host real quick before you do that. Okay.
So I'm going to share screen, and I want that.
Tell you, I've been out speaking a lot lately, and as such, I'm still kind of surprised at how many people are not necessarily paying attention to the big picture of what's going on at the national level, what's going on government-wise when it comes to real estate and organized real estate. You guys hopefully have been on my meetings before. You know that NAR has been sued 13 different times. Obviously, some of those lawsuits have been combined. We are talking, buyer side lawsuits. We are talking seller side lawsuits, and the clear cooperation policy lawsuits. There's just a wide variety of things, and NAR, rightfully so, is kind of reeling from some of this, added attention. Plus the fact that the Department of Justice and NAR are involved in active litigation right now as well. So all of that being said, we are at the CRMLS level doing as much as we possibly can to plan for contingencies. And one of the things that's going to be a real bellwether for the industry is the Sitzer and Winger case versus NAR. And this is a seller side lawsuit, and they are alleging that because sellers are forced to pay buyer's agents in the transaction, that they have been disadvantaged by, in some cases, the class action lawsuit being held in Chicago, the Morrell case, is a $5 to $7 billion lawsuit. Sitzer and Winger is a Missouri-only lawsuit, and with the trebled damages, potentially it could be a $700 million $700 million liability if NAR were to lose this lawsuit. I quote my attorney all the time, and he tells me, it's not in these cases, but just across the board, that even having the law and all the facts on your side, you still stand a 25% chance of losing a lawsuit. And in looking through what we know about this case specifically, the judge has not been highly supportive of NAR's position in a number of different ways and some of his rulings that have come out. So Sitzer and Winger goes to trial in February of next year. And basically, the judge has already set the parameters that it's going to be a 6-week trial, and everybody needs to get their information in, and he is going to most likely provide a decision back in the March, April, early May timeframe. So Sitzer and Winger will tell us a lot about what's going on in regards to the industry. You guys do need to get your arms wrapped around a different number of things that are going on. Part of the Sitzer-Winger trial, Sitzer-Winger versus NAR et al., and also they've sued the franchisors on this one as well, is that they've asked for a injunction against the National Association of Realtors, if they win, that NAR cannot have the mandatory compensation rule within the multiple listing service across the United States. And because CRMLS is affiliated with local associations, those local associations are required to adhere to the NAR model rule set, and we have done so. And if that occurs, cooperation or compensation could be going out of the multiple listing service across the board. Does NAR have the right and I believe obligation to appeal this ruling if it does go against them? Absolutely. And we don't really know how all of this is going to play out, but one of the things I think is important for you guys to get your arms wrapped around and probably take a look at is a couple of things that are going on within your forms products as well. Recognize part of the Department of Justice's lawsuit against NAR is that they wanted 4 things to occur. And CRMLS and NAR have adopted 3 of those 4 things. And a lot of it has to do with transparency to the buyer of selling office compensation, of the brokerages that are involved in the marketplace. And we've accommodated those changes within our platform. So we're excited to get some of these changes out, but recognize that this could be a significant change. CAR has done a great job with an additional set of form products. I think 3 that you at the brokerage community really need to get your arms around and take a look at are, and I'm not going to do them in any specific order, but there is the SPBB that'll be released in December of this year. And it's not ready for prime time yet, but it is a very simple form that basically instructs the buyer's agent to basically include this form as part of their offer process, and by which they are requesting a certain amount of commission be paid to the buyer's broker. The commission will not be in the MLS. The commission will actually be a contractual form that is exchanged in between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, and the seller will approve. That is called the SPBB, and it's basically the seller's proposal to the buyer's broker. And basically, It is a very simplest form and something that you guys need to get your arms wrapped around. I'm not saying that you need to start utilizing it in December, but you need to wrap your arms around it. The reason why CAR's included it in the latest release is that if Sitzer does go the wrong way in February, their next forms release is in June of next year. They needed to get this form out just in case. So the other piece that you do need to take a look at is that there is a new buyer broker representation agreement, a number of different ones. And you need to be aware of what those are, especially if compensation is out of the multiple listing service. We've been advocating this for a long time at the CRMLS level, that it is in the brokers and agents' best interest to do as much as they possibly can to enter into an agreement with their buyers prior to a offer being presented on a property. It just makes smart business sense, and it stops a lot of the complaints that we hear of wandering buyers and some of the procuring cause issues that we hear. So highly recommend that you guys take a look at the new buyer broker representation agreements. And the last one is the anticipated broker comp disclosure. So you guys know, one of the changes that one of the changes we made last year at the end of 2021 was a change to our rule set, which allows our brokerage community to display selling office compensation on their website. So buyers know what selling office compensation is being offered through the MLS to their buyer's agent. And that, I think, is important. This new form, this anticipated broker compensation disclosure, basically, as you show properties, as you make offers on properties, this form is to be filled out to make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to assure that the buyer has been made aware of the compensation that you're being offered through the multiple listing service at this time, and in the future, potentially through a SPBB. Okay, a lot of information there. I know, is this a slam dunk that NAR is going to lose this lawsuit? No, it is not, or any of the others. NAR's got 50 years of antitrust case law in their favor. MLSs have, that amount of positive court decisions, but it just seems to the attorneys that I'm talking to a little bit different this time, and recognize that the Department of Justice and the FTC are actively looking into real estate and actively looking into what they call illegal tying situations. And there are some in the current administration that view one of those illegal tying activities is that a seller's agent pays the buyer's agent through the multiple listing service. So just know that there's a lot of pressure out there, and I'm not saying that all of this stuff is going to occur, but I'm just telling you guys, you need to stay on top of it. You need to be aware of what's going on out in the industry, and that there are some very significant changes potentially heading everyone's way. And we may not get all that much time to really get ourselves comfortable with what those changes are. The MLS in Seattle, the Northwest MLS, has already adopted a rule change whereby the seller does offer directly to the buyer's broker a compensation amount. And the reason why that's done is to make sure that it still can be included in financing. Obviously, there's some major concerns that any of that commission that was offered outside of a buyer's ability to finance is going to have some huge difficulties in moving forward for anybody. So we are looking very closely at what's going on in the Northwest, as I know a lot of people across the country, including the government, are as well.
The gist of the matter is that if NAR loses this case, here it comes, it's all in there for you. The cooperating broker compensation. So when you're a buyer's agent and you look at the MLS and it says 2 or 2.5 or 3%, it will not be there anymore. So as I've been teaching this class, we've been deep into the conversation, and I've had somebody pop up in the chat and say, but if it says 2%, I'm going to get 2%, right? I'm like, it's not going to say. If we lose this case, buyers and buyers agents will be negotiating among themselves, and there are some new forms to ask the seller to cooperate. So the closest I can get to how this is going to look is like when a buyer falls in love with a FSBO. And you have to call and find out if they're cooperating and how much are they cooperating. And then you're going to have to add documents to it to
I have a question.
Obtain your commission. Yes.
So if I send one of those, if I ask the seller's agent what the commission is and they say, we're not paying commission, can we say, well, we're not buying the house?
You can, but same problem we've always had, it's against your fiduciary duty. You will have to collect from your buyer. And by the way, I'm about to show you one of the things he said to you was, so one of the things I need you to know is that all existing buyer broker agreements that are on your zip forms now will be gone December 19th, and one will be there. And using the new format, every single buyer has to do a buyer broker agreement now. Every single buyer. Now, it has a couple things I'm going to show you when we hit the forms where you can make it exclusive so that they can only buy with you no matter what happens, or it can be a one at a time thing. It also says that if you are able to, so if you tell your buyer that you normally earn 3% and the buyer's only paying 2%, you will have to negotiate the remainder from your buyer to earn the top side of it. Part of the reason, besides the steering claim, part of the reason that they did this was because young, inexperienced buyers agents often have a bad habit of saying, I'm free to you, to the buyer, and that is not remotely true. We're not free. So that last year when we thought we had a settlement, that one form was going to be enough. We had a regime change, as you know, in the politics, and I'm not caring or saying which side of that I or any of you are on, but the Department of Justice took another look at that settlement and went back to the drawing board. So we are back with the Department of Justice trying to decide if this is going to be sufficient. Now, by the way, we had a regular forms update as well. We had a few changes to the contract and all that. So I am going to now share screen again. I'm going to open up the packet that I gave you guys. I want to tell you that first few pages is the summary of all the forms. All right, I'm going to open here. This is the summary of all the forms. And on the left side, you will see a dot. I did not do any of the leasing forms. We just don't have time for that. If you're in property management, you'll have to take another class for that because I just left out everything having to do with leasing. I'm going to share screen again. I want that one. You guys, Steve, you can see my screen?
No, there it goes.
You guys are stuck with a boomer as a tech person. So here's your forms release. If I put a little dot on this left side, it's the forms that I did include in here. If I didn't put a dot there, it's not in your package. Okay, so I'm going to go past that. We're going to jump right into the fresh RPA. Page 1. Are you guys ready? Everybody ready? Yay, say ready. Okay. All right. Page 1. They had to change the points to give you a place to put in points if you needed them. It had defaulted to something else previously. So we have a little update there on page 1. At the bottom of page 1, you'll see that we are now in, this is the review date. So you will want a contract that says this or going forward, not going backward to use. So that you make sure you have the right one. This is the one that will appear in your zip forms. All of these forms are going to magically appear in your zip forms on the 19th, and your previous forms are going to disappear. On page 2, G3 has been added to say that the seller agrees to compensate the buyer's broker on a separate agreement. And we'll get to the separate agreement, but there is a place for you to add in your forms that I'm going to show you to negotiate your commissions with the list, with the seller directly, with the seller directly. We had a rule, we clarified a rule here in L4 all the way down to L7. So for those of you who didn't know, the buyer gets 5 days from whenever, so he gets the 17 days if you get your documents out on time, your 5 days, your 7 days, whatever the seller has agreed to do all their disclosures, but they get 5 days from when they got it, no matter what. So when your HOA docs come in late, or your another great reason to pre-escrow, you have to give them 5 days. Okay? This has always been true, but it was something that managers and were having to swim upstream on, so they cleaned it up there. M3, we have occupied units. So we got a new form last year, the TOPA form, where it is a much better tenant form. It covers estoppels and leases and payment histories, and they're now saying that if there's tenants in the property, you want a TOPA every time. Okay? N2 is just me reminding you again that it's delivery of documents +5 now. It is it always has been, but we'll no longer be able to rely on the contingency removal date if they received all or part of the disclosures, required disclosures late. Moving on, because I want to keep this going. On the home warranty, they're reminding again that the buyer shall order. The buyer shall choose the company and what coverages they want, and it's only the amount that you're trying to get the seller to pay. If the buyer picks services that exceed that amount, escrow is authorized to pay off the seller side of the HUD without further instructions. At the top here, several contracts went away last year. All of the tenant occupied, probate purchase agreement, manufactured purchase agreement, all of those went away. And this year, the mixed use purchase agreement went away as well. These are all addendums now. So you will use a regular RPA plus an addendum based on your situation, whether it's probate or manufactured home or whatever your situation is. On 5 here, where I have a little star, and then regarding possible remedies, I taught this last year when I taught the new RPA class. But for those of you who don't know that, there is no such thing as a non-refundable deposit. CAR has specifically challenged the CAR certified trainers to make sure that we're saying this loud and clear in our classes. No matter what language we use, whether the seller or buyer agree, they are still subject to liquidated damages. So, and the clauses, and whether we gave them everything before they removed their contingencies, all of that is still on the table. So even if they passed the deposit through and handed it to you, it could be litigated backwards back to them. So they really want to be clear that you all need to stop saying that or implying or writing. And so what the new language says is, you better check with your attorney if you're going to use that kind of non-refundable language. There is no such thing as a non-refundable deposit. On paragraph 7A here, if this matches the grid up front where we're going to have to use the TOPA form if you're going to have a tenant in the property at close of escrow. So besides the fact that they get 5 days after you give them something, whether or not they need 5 days to review it, they do get that, and you can't insist on a contingency removal any sooner for that matter. They have to approve everything. So when they remove a contingency, they are also approving that document at the same time. So merely getting them the HOA documents is not sufficient to remove the contingency. They have to have the 5 days, and they have to like what's in them. So if they don't like what's in them, then they're going to be using other methods to mitigate or escape the escrow, depending on what they found there. But they want you to remember that merely delivering the missing thing is not sufficient to either erase the 5 days or for them to approve, for them to still have approval rights. Okay. Same with HOA docs here, where I've got an F here, the review and approval right there. No matter where the contingency came from, whether it's on the RPA, whether you wrote it in later, whether you had to add something, no matter where it is, they get delivery plus 5 days and they have to like it. Okay. I'm not sure how many of you had a chance to take my new RPA class, but the items included in the sale now, there's a new rule. We still have the fixture rule if we go to court. So the fixture rule you learned as a real estate agent still fundamentally applies as a law. But as an industry, we changed it last year. And I made a, and I'm going to show you where it says that here. If it's in the property at the time of acceptance, it is supposed to be there when it closes. So if this specifically was done to put the onus back on the listing agent and the seller to find out what they're taking out of the house. The most common things have been Nest, thermostats, and Ring doorbells that people are showing up. Sorry, sorry, my phone rang. I thought I turned it off. Have been showing up, and there's simply a wire hanging out of the wall. That is not how that. That's not how that works. So yes, personal property has to be, is exempted. But if you're going to remove the Nest or the chandelier or the bathroom mirrors and they did it on purpose to force listing agents to get deep into that subject. So I have personally gone to a walkthrough where I opened the garage door and $10,000 worth of those white cabinets, garage cabinets had disappeared. The seller had not included them. We had not asked for them. We thought they were attached and they would remain. The seller said that they hold his work tools for a career that he has very specifically that requires a lot of tools. He never intended to leave them, wasn't going to leave them, wasn't going to put them back. So you have to be very thoughtful. So this last year, they put in that everything on the window has to stay. Apparently that wasn't enough because they had to add hardware and rods as well. So we got that as well. Also pool heaters. I don't know who's snatching out the pool heater, but apparently that has come up as well. Furthermore, there's a new rule. A seller will delist from his alarm company or from his whatever the service is. He will get himself off it so that address can be opened up for the new person, and they will support the efforts of that person. One of the ones that gets me every time is those ADT alarms systems. They as soon as the buyer calls and tells them that they're there, they won't speak to them because they already have an account on that house, and it becomes a whole thing. So the seller is obligated to get himself off of any system that the buyer is going to need to use going forward for the home. All right. If it was in the property at the time of acceptance, it needs to still be there when the time comes. Allocation of costs. They added the word tests and reports to the allocation of costs. They're making sure you guys understand that when you ask for a test, you're not also getting the repair. So just like I don't know if you're familiar, but on the SWPI, the septic thing, it says who's going to pay for it. But if you read the paragraph underneath, it says if anything's discovered, we're going back to the table to negotiate it. That is the same about any inspection that you ask the seller to do or the buyer does and wants to negotiate that repair. Tests do not guarantee that it will be repaired. Once again, covering the home warranty to match the grid that this buyer shall choose the home warranty plan and any coverages. Okay? And the buyer will pay for any cost over. So I'm trying to keep moving because we have quite a few new forms too. So there's a brand new form, Corey and Steve, right? Corey, I'll be all over this. There's a brand new form for, it's basically a TDS for solar systems. It's not going to make our sellers any smarter about what they have on their roof, but it is intended to, it has the same weight as a TDS in that they can say they don't know and mark no. We're still going to need a picture of the contract so that we know what they have. Almost 8 out of 10 times they have a lease on their roof and they think they have a fully paid solar. So those are very different things. So there's going to be a completely new form for solar systems. One of the inspection contingencies now is going to be that the buyer has ascertained if there's a cost for flood or fire insurance. They have gotten deep into transactions where a buyer finally gets around to pricing the fire insurance, and it's gone through the roof and it's gotten very, very expensive, and now has become prohibitive. So they're saying that when you're doing your inspections, you should be looking into whether you have a cost for either flood or fire insurance. Fire insurance is the most common, of course. They cleaned up paragraph 14 a little bit because they added some new paragraphs. So the highlights here are just to realign all the paragraphs with the new rules and the new forms. So that's what that's mostly about. There's new forms for brokers' compensation. If the seller pays the commission or any part thereof, he's entitled to written proof, and there's a new form and a procedure for that we're going to go over here in a little bit. So like the attorney from CRMLS said, we won't get a next update until June, where they can clean up whatever's happened since then. And remember, these are all new procedures, just like the new contract last year. We don't have litigation. We don't have precedent. We don't have hindsight yet on how this is all going to go. I'm trying to get a speaker from someone in Seattle, up in Washington, to come talk to us about, because from the national reports I read, real estate is still going on, even with this big change, and that we will all live to talk about it. But it is going to be a shocker to the system for a while. Assignments in general, you do have to do an AOAA form to assign, and the person is required to do all the same things they were supposed to do if they would have done if they'd been in the transaction at the beginning. They have to look at all the forms. They have to. The only exception is if they are assigning out to their trust, do they not have to re-sign the whole file top to bottom? So at least 50 times a year, I've even made a Facebook post that I just send right out for it, that at least 50 times a year, I'm asked if they really do have to sign the whole file top to bottom. Yes, they do. So if they're going to be assigned in, and the seller has a right to know within 1 day of an assignment. One of the confusions I want to clear up out there about assignments too is because they finally gave us a date that, that we didn't have a date for assignments, because they can happen at any time in the transaction depending on the needs. But because we didn't have a date in the new contract, they tied it to 17 days. I told everybody when I taught the class, that's not going to stop assignments the last 3 to 5 days of the transaction, nor should you want it to, because most often it brings in the better buyer or mom and dad or whoever's got the broom that's going to clean it up and get it closed. So don't hang your hat on if you don't know by 17 days you're not going to have an assignment, or that you shouldn't allow one. So I just want to be clear about assignments. CAR actually teaches it. You're almost always getting a better buyer when they assign, meaning somebody who's willing to remove contingencies and close. And that's the name of the game. They're letting you know what a legal holiday is, because we've had back and forth as to what county does what. If you, at the beginning of every year, you can get a multi-county recorder's calendar from your title rep. I keep one on my desktop because sometimes San Diego's closed and San Bernardino's open, and vice versa. So if it is a normal closing and the escrow company or the lender or the recorder's office is closed on it doesn't have to be a traditional holiday, on across the territory is what I'm trying to say. They do get one additional day to close, one more business day to close. A good example of this was last Friday when we had Veterans Day. Everybody was closed, and that would give them all the way around till Monday to close their thing up. This one right here, they finally got rid of they're getting rid of the electronic signature form, and they've just built it in that unless otherwise noted, somebody tells you they're 80 years old and they don't use email and they don't do that sort of thing, you will agree to sign by electronic signatures. They added a little something to the arbitration here. It says once arbitration has begun, if you've hired an attorney, he must come to a full and complete stop and serve notice that he's stopping until the arbitration is over. So they added that. They're still beating to death trying to get you guys to know who's president of their corporation or secretary or authorized signer, who's in a trust, who's got a power of attorney, all that sort of thing. So they still trying to get the RCSD built into the contract because they know people don't like to do it extra. The problem is that the seller can, and Corey, I'm not sure if she can hear me or not, but there's an ethical barrier here. And do you back up and write over somebody's signature, your delivery addresses and your RCSDs when you, as a listing agent, you get the offer and now a signed offer, you're going to write something above their signature? That is always a no. But about half the transaction coordinators are, if that happens, are sending it out and having it initialed and brought back to at least have something. Some people aren't uncomfortable with it at all and are going ahead and putting in their delivery stuff above. You should be switching to an RCSD form. Yes, I know it's an extra form. Too bad. Same for delivery. In the old days, we tried to fill out everything for the listing agent we could, thinking we were doing them a favor and they would like us better and maybe accept our offer. When you fill out the seller's contact information and all that, you're actually setting their delivery for them. And they may either need to correct it or it's being sent to the wrong place anyway. So try to get past the annoyance of 2 or 3 additional forms because something isn't tidy. I know Corey would tell you that we all feel those frustrations. It's just how we clean up our files. They put back the address and the email and the phone numbers and stuff into the broker box back here. Finally, escrow companies didn't. We would get contracts and not even know how to reach you guys because there'd be no address and which office you were in and all that. So they tidied that up a little bit. You can also, as you see here, right there, you can say where you want to be delivered. So if you do not ever want to be texted a delivery, you can leave that offer there and email only, or you can say email or other. For the alternate address, CAR reminds you not to use the transaction coordinator's email there because that person does not have authority to negotiate or receive sensitive data on your behalf. We all know we're supposed to be giving it to our assistant. So, all right, that gets us through the RPA. You guys ready for the new buyer broker? Everybody can hear me okay? Steve, you still with me?
Yeah, we can hear you. No, we couldn't hear a thing you said, MJ. Can you start over? Well, I do have a question though. Yep. What happened with the $10,000 cabinets?
I don't even remember. I think we paid it off. It was quite a few years ago. I think we had to pay it off. Wow. I think both the agents and I both split it, or we went 4 ways. I can't remember how we said it, but the cabinets did not come back. They had to
all right. That was costly.
Clears a bell. So here's your new buyer broker agreement. Every buyer gets one of these if this rule changes. Now, the contract defaults in 2 directions right now, and so does this agreement. So you can use this as a buyer broker agreement, even if the law doesn't change. But if it does, this is going to be the form, and then they will tidy up the language in June. So it's going to start on a particular day, and then it's only going to be good for a few days, or 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I don't know why they didn't stick with a start and stop date. I'm sure I've listened to some of the directors talk, and there are often good reasons for these things, even though we can't think of them at this moment. But it is going to expire at 11:59, 3 days after, or 1 day after, or whatever. I always like this shopping area here where you're talking about the type of property to be acquired. When I was a broker, I would teach people to use the buyer broker agreement by treating it as a shopping list. You know, get all the zip codes in there, get all those things they want in there. So this is a good place for you to, it can be a single property, it can be a price range, it can be a zip code, it can be a type of property. It can be for, if you'll see here in B, it can be for specific property. Or if you really get going, you can attach a list of properties to the buyer broker agreement by marking C. The compensation to the broker is buyer agrees to pay the broker as shown here. So a percentage and the TC fee, a flat fee of this pursuant to a compensation agreement. So, you know, it would seem like we're all going to be able to say we want 3% right up front, right? But what are you going to do with your 100% VA buyer who's got, that's one of the things the attorney was talking about, you know, whether the lender can, whether the property can bear the cost of financing it into the appraisal and all the other. This is, unless you check the box, this is a non-exclusive agreement, and you can use it one by one by one by, they can sign for one property. And then later, maybe if your relationship improves, you could do another one where it becomes exclusive. So if it's exclusive, no matter what they buy, they owe you whatever the share is. But that's not going to stop you from having to negotiate to see what you can get from the seller first. There's going to be a form of it. There is a brand new form just for cancellation of a buyer broker agreement, and it expires however long days after receipt. And I don't know how many of you guys know this, but if you put that on a listing agreement or on this form, you say that for the next 10 days after this, if you buy this particular house, you are still going to owe me, you know, you have to use the new form and name those properties. Years ago for listing agents, I made up a rhyme for that. You have to name them to claim them. And this is going to be very important in the buyer broker agreement. This will become, it won't be just me whispering it in your ear. If you want to, after you cancel buyer broker agreement, exclude them from buying that property without your help, because you know you're the first person to show it to them, then you're going to have to, when you cancel, send a list of what properties you are reserving and have that conversation. Like if they say, no, you can't get paid on that one, you know perfectly well it was my aunt's house or whatever the thing is, they're going to have a conversation with you about it. It creates transparency, which is one of the things NAR, one of the 4 things NAR was required to, for us to stop appearing to make deals among ourselves instead of with the sellers and buyers. There has to be a complete accounting for that, for any monies received now. There's a new form for that as well. And then E right here is the one that if you want to say for the next 30 days after this cancels, if you buy the house on 1234 Main Street, you are still entitled to get that money if you named it and turned it into them so that they know it was named as a property you're reserving. There's a new form for disclosing what the fees are going to be, and I'm going to show you what that looks like too. The whole thing's going to be paid through escrow, still can be paid through escrow and do a CDA and all that sort of stuff. Please don't forget that any agreement of this sort, listing or purchase contract of any sort, requires an agency. So don't forget that. I'm betting that CAR will bundle this with the agency in a couple of forms. But if they don't, please don't forget that an agency is the first rule of procuring costs. So if you're arguing with another broker and he's got an agency because you thought it was one form that you didn't need to bother with until you went into deal, his agency is going to top your agency as the relationship. You will definitely want to put in agency. I think a lot of people are going to like this. I think this is similar to when we had to do the PEDS last year. We're saying within 5 days, they got to get approved. They got to give us the pre-qual. They got to give us all that stuff. We got to know where their money's coming from. This encourages them to get that done. There's a line in here saying that the buyer agrees to indemnify us completely if the buyer does not tell us that they have judgments, does not tell us that they, I had years and years ago, I had a man who wanted to build a pool for his family in the backyard and did not tell anybody when he was buying property that that was his goal, was besides a new house, was to give his family a pool. 30 days after close of escrow, the pool company told him he had easements running all across his yard, gas, electric, and all sorts of stuff, and he couldn't build there, and he tried to sue us for not telling him that. So this is a similar thing. If they fail to tell us a material fact, they're getting divorced and they have child, whatever it is that is going to ruin the transaction, it is limiting the damage that can happen to a realtor for that. Mediation is in here, not arbitration, but mediation. So we will have an opportunity to sit down with them if it goes south, but arbitration is not in here because arbitration is binding. At that point, depending on the amount of the damage, which I'm sliding on over here, for those of you who take who've had my my new RPA class, the small claims is still a place. If any claim in real estate fits into a small claims case, it's supposed to go there first, and it does not have to go to the Superior Court. So if the amount of commission you were supposed to get from somebody is $12,000, that's outside the $10,000 limit. At that point, as your broker, I would say reduce it to 12 and reduce it to 10 and take them to small claims anyway. Okay, so if the claim, and it is $10,000 for individuals now, but $5,000 for a corporation. So if you need to sue a realtor, another realtor or another corporate, or the buyer or seller or corporation, you're going to be limited to 5. All right, so buyer broker. Here is our next new form, anticipated broker compensation. They're warning you that whatever you ask them for is going to affect the seller's total cost of the transaction. This is, again, the transparency. We all know that our commissions add on to what the seller has to pay. This is the form that he was saying that it's not all there yet. They don't have this completely right yet, but the gist of it is that we will say that we got money from the seller at 2%, and right now it still shows the MLS because we still have a cooperating broker compensation on the MLS at least until March, probably until March. You can just say it up there. If you choose to start using this form, I'm betting many don't until the law is pressed. If you then got another 0.5% from the buyer, you're going to need to put there. If you also, so I've had a couple funny questions, and frankly, I would try it. One of the questions I got, I said, what happens when I have to give the big old credit to fix something because the seller or buyer won't do it? I would personally be adjusting this form in a manner that makes it look, that shows I got this and then I paid that. So I don't think they've addressed that yet, but you will be showing your total compensation on a form similar to this if we lose this lawsuit. This is that same advisory that we give on a listing agreement, like on the, we have the seller's advisory where we tell them in general, don't hide things, please disclose, tell us what you know. This is a similar thing for buyers, and it will attach to the buyer broker agreement. So I'm picturing the first bundle is going to have the new buyer broker, the buyer's advisory, and the new compensation forms and agency in there as well when you start a fresh buyer. So this is the cancellation of buyer representation. At either party, it is unilateral, not bilateral like a listing agreement. Either party can cancel this agreement upon a certain notice. And you guys will write in here how many days after receipt it would be canceled. You then can get into whether there's any compensation owed. And then on the second page, it has a breakdown of what the, if you reserve some properties, the name it to claim it rule that I just talked to you about, if you're only getting expenses, if you're getting expenses plus a part of the commission, if you, the seller is going to, however it's going to come out, this is where they, or all the way down to no compensation owed at all, just like we do on a listing form when we let a buyer, when we let a seller go away because they're more trouble than they're worth. This is the form, notice of broker involved properties. This is the form you're going to use to name it to claim it. You can either put the properties that you want down there in paragraph 4, or you can attach a list if it's been quite a few. This is the name it to claim it form. I wish we'd had this a long time ago. That's a good one. If you want the seller to pay part of your commission, this is the form that's going to be attached to the new to the RPA. When you write an RPA, you're going to be asking them to pay you a percentage and or pay your fees, whatever it is you're going to ask them to do. It's going to be, this is the new form that we would use to ask the seller. So this one's, I'm bet it's going to be bundled with the new RPA if we lose as well. Although they won't rebundle until June. So we have to live with it. Okay, so setting aside all the lawsuits and everything, because of the world we just went through where people were writing non-contingent offers, I mean, no inspections, no nothing. This is an opportunity for us to tell them a warning. It's a little behind the times, but we now have a form that says if you're writing a non-contingent offer, these are the dangers, and you advise them to do so. This is the new solar questionnaire. It has, it says, do you own it? Where are the forms? Where's the contract? And then it has questions, as I mentioned, that look TDS like that they need to fill out. So this will be a new disclosure for the seller side when they're solar. So we got a new cancellation of contract, a completely new cancellation. One of the things you should know is, for those of you who don't know, I preach this high and low. If you're canceling a transaction, it's paragraph 14, period. No ever use anything else that you can avoid. So even if you're down to just one contingency left, you can say paragraph 14 because you still have time to cancel. When you tell them, so you removed all your contingencies and then you don't like your loan rate, the seller has an opportunity to say you have a loan. You're not walking away from a loan because you can't get one. You don't want this one. Okay. So they can argue with you and debate you and hold you to the contract. Paragraph 14 always should be used to cancel transactions. This is a question on the CAR certified trainer class. And when Neil Kalin from CAR taught this rule to a room full of brokers, people popped up out of their seats. I do want to know why they cancel. Why are they canceling? I simply must know. And Neil said, you don't want to know. First of all, they're either going to tell you something that they're holding some report or something you didn't even know existed, or they're going to put you in a position where your seller wants to fight. Okay. Paragraph 14 is where you want to cancel. So having said that, they have many people, when they type up cancellations, default to the box that says mutual. Okay. They are making that go away to a degree. The proposed mutual cancellation now has a time frame. You're going to give them 1, 2, 3 days, whatever it is and if no one replies, so you're going to cancel, you're going to try to use mutual, and then you're going to put 1, 2, or 3 days in there, whatever you're going to put in. And then it says, it says the 3rd day after cancellation. I'm getting used to these new forms myself. If no one answers, it is not accepted. It just dies, it voids. So it is encouraging you to stop using mutual as an escape route when it is not mutually agreed. Okay. And because of this new rule, it shoved the cancellation onto 2 pages. So you still have the chance to cancel the escrow, split the deposit in there, hold the deposit in there, release part of it, hold part of it, whatever has to be done. But the cancellation did format onto 2 pages now instead of 1. And that is it. I'm going to stop sharing here. So this is a really important class, and I'm going to be teaching it over and over again for the next few months. And you can call me and we can go over anything you want to go over. And I know that this was, like I said, this was almost a bigger bite than the new RPA was. The RPA at least didn't include 100% that you don't even get paid unless you can work it out. Are there questions today? Steve will give you the video. I'm seeing in the chat now that
the video didn't come over to me, so I didn't see it, but
I'll just I put it in the chat, so it went back. It's back a ways. The second we hang up, I'll post it again here. It's pretty big. It's 19 megs, so I'm not sure if it's going through the system right now, but I'll send it over to you. So what's our questions?
I'm still stuck on the buyer's paying commission.
Yep. Every time I teach this class, I have wide eyes and mouth open.
Well, so if the seller doesn't pay the commission and they just flat out say I'm not paying it, and the buyer says I'm not paying it, you work for free?
That's it. What was your procedure on this for FSBOs? I'm just challenging you for the answer. What was your procedure when that happened with a FSBO?
I don't know if I want to say it publicly, but you don't. I'm not.
So I want to teach you a technique you might not be familiar.
Go
with.
for it.
So when somebody comes up short, the seller comes up short sometimes too. Once in a while, spends, doesn't make their house payments, and next thing you know, we've eaten up the whole net sheet and they have money. We can actually take a note I know that's not cash, but we can take an IOU for the commission. I know that's a worst case scenario and would still need to be disclosed to the lender. And I'm not sure how this is going to work on VAs at all. And I was hoping that with the Department of Justice involved, that any settlement would include what lenders are going to be able to do to include commissions in. And like I said, I have been watching the national Facebook pages, and Seattle, apparently Washington has survived it. So I am trying to look for somebody who's knowledgeable enough to speak on it up there. But apparently most of the time a seller will go on expecting, and it'll be part of your presentation, that, you know, we're going to have to cooperate now. Be prepared that they're going to ask high, and I've been saying it could be as low as $500 it could be ridiculous what they reply to you as. And then like a FSBO, it'll be between you and your clients as to, and then when you canceled, you would take a compensation equaling costs plus or your full commission or whatever. But I have occasionally, both as an individual and as a broker, had to accept a note. Most people are surprised, don't even know that you can do that. What I really like is when they pre-write the check, because if you write a check in the first place, it's admission in court of 100% of the debt. So the judge doesn't have, so you write somebody a check for a repair and then you bounce that check. You cannot go back and say to the judge, well, I didn't like this, that, or the other. Once you wrote the check, you accepted the amount. And if you bounce a check, it's worth 3 times the amount in court, if you have room to the limit of the small claims. So, you know, $1,500, you could triple. So when an agent calls me and says they didn't do the $150 little last repair and the buyer's going nuts about it, and they'll say, should I take a check? Well, no, we really would rather not, because we didn't put it through the HUD and all that sort of stuff. But for these tiny little amounts that aren't going to happen any other way, I will authorize a check and take the risks that I'm going to have a problem with that, because I know it's complete admission of a debt, and it's worth triple if they bounce it to me. So I don't have all the answers. Like I told you, we don't have hindsight. I can't tell you Washington has already survived this. And I don't know if you heard, because the guy was breaking up, but he said, that is this for sure that NAR is going to lose? No, he said they do have 50 years of antitrust law training under their belt. They know what they're doing. He did say that they had pre-agreed, though, that if they have to do if they do have to go back after and what do you call it? The word won't come to me right now. If they have to appeal it, sorry, it just won't come to me. If they have to appeal it, we've already pre-agreed that it will take place nationwide. It won't be just a state by state agreement. So at that point, the second loss would seal this deal nationwide. So
yeah.
And this is what they want, you know, before COVID came. If you go back to the Inman, if you're a member of Inman, or if you go back to the Inman transcripts during just before COVID, they were putting the depositions out every single day of the trial depositions, and the things the bigwigs were saying about why they teach their people the way they do was stunning to hear. I mean, just blatant admissions of procedures that will not work in this new system. So, and the only way they can deal to make buyers and buyers teams stop doing that is to remove it from the altogether.
Does anybody have any other questions, or somebody's got to have a question? I know my head's spinning. Oh, Jeff. Oh, let me unmute you, man. Hold on a sec. Hang on a sec.
Did it go through?
Yeah, there you
go. Hey, first off, thanks for putting this on. I'm sure we all here appreciate it. So MJ, actually, this could be for anybody really. With this new guideline or potentially new rule, what is to stop a listing agent from educating the seller to not pay the commission to the buyer in hopes of double ending the deal? because we still have the ability to represent both parties, which is another topic in and of itself. I don't agree with it. I don't represent buyers and sellers. I think it's a conflict personally. I haven't for years. But what's to protect a buyer's agent other than maybe a buyer broker agreement in writing, obviously, outlining, which I've been doing for 20 years, my compensation, if not paid for by another party. But we all know a lot of listing agents, especially lately in a hot market, or what we had a few years back or whatever, last couple of years, educating the seller to not pay this commission and then hope that buyer says, well, I really want this house and I'm not paying it, so I'll just go straight to the listing agent. So I guess it's a two-part question. One, it's that. And two, does the listing agent also have to complete this type of procedural form if they represent the buyer on the transaction?
Yes, they do.
Well, I think that by them forcing everyone to do the buyer broker agreements, that's going to cut out a lot of that. I would assume, but
And one of the answers I say is it's going to come down to which is the better offer, and the better offer has less commission on it. And unfortunately, that's not a great place for us to be in.
Right.
And the reason that it's one of the things I've been saying is that, yes, this is scary for buyer agents immediately for sure. And I definitely think there will be some fall away from people who are not ready to deal with the buyer broker agreement. Jeff, I'm happy to see that you have routinely done them. Good for you. I see in your notes here. And for those who didn't, you will be now getting ready to do them all the time. But the fourth goal was to reduce commissions across the board as a home expense. So they're picking buyers agents' pockets right now, but the next wave, whatever comes next, will it be reducing. I'm just saying this isn't going to be a heyday for listing agents for long, because they're trying to pick our pocket as an industry. They're trying to reduce.
Well, I will tell you, as a broker owner myself, and again, close to 20 years doing this, we have done a disservice to many buyers over the years by not training them on this years ago or as they enter the industry. Most brokers that I've dealt with do not enforce it. They do not train on it. They don't talk about it. They say it's not an enforceable contract. And I'm here to tell you that it is a flat out lie. These are enforceable contracts. I've had many agents get paid by a buyer flipping on them to another agent and or going to a new home construction site, and they still got their compensation because they protected themselves with a buyer broker agreement. I am not shocked by this. I'm just surprised it's taken this long.
I wanted to mention on dual, when I broker, if you're dual and I pick it up, as soon as I pick it up in your file, I require you to serve your self-notice performs right on time. So regardless of whether you know the buyer's loan is going to be available Friday, you don't get to screw the seller from Tuesday through Friday by not serving the notice to perform and having the seller in position ready to cancel if he needs to. So I just wanted to throw that in about the dual agency. Yeah. Every time somebody comes to me about it, I say, serve yourself notices, and they always giggle. And then I have to say, no, what? I wasn't kidding.
Yeah, I can tell you when I used to train, when I was a trainer for Keller Williams back in the day, a regional trainer, we would have this conversation on the buyer side of things. And I would ask directly, especially in the age of technology, you know, if you're a buyer's agent representing a buyer and you meet your client to go show property and they show up with a stack of papers of homes they want to see, totally different than what you were going to show them, because most agents will go and look at what that compensation is. And you're saying that's going to go away, which I think, okay, great. I would ask them, what would your response be when you don't show them the houses they want to go see? Because you have fiduciary duty to them to show them the right property that fits their needs, not your pocketbook. And no one's ever given me a response other than, well, it's only $100 compensation. It's a 1%. It's $1,000. That's not a reason. That's not a reason. You cannot do that if you have a true agency relationship and a true client to client, agent relationship. You can't do that. And so I had this conversation probably 10 years ago. And it's just crazy that it's just now coming to fruition.
Let me give you a semi-recent example of exactly what you're talking about. As a broker, I would have people come in and say that the listing site commission has been spent all away by fixing windows or whatever during a short sale, or they've had to promise it away, or they had to this, that, or the other, and there is no we did free deals during the short sale market because people weren't careful with what they're spending. The second thing that's similar, but is I just want to make a point is sometimes when a transaction has canceled, the agent and that person are not friendly anymore. And I've had agents stand at my desk and tell me they're not going to try and get the deposit back. They're not going to see it through. And I'm like, you positively are going to stick with it until the deposit comes back. You may have me do your talking as far as the client goes or whatever, but the idea that you can walk away from a transaction after you've obligated yourself as a fiduciary is not correct, which is why I think we're going to be taking a few notes.
Yeah, my advice is that if you are a buyer's agent or work with buyers, to just get real good at fiduciary relationship conversations. And because I've been doing this for close to 20 years, I feel comfortable in my conversations around buyer broker agreements. But if you've never used one, hopefully your your broker is going to have some training on it, because I knew this day was going to come. It hasn't yet, but I'm anticipating it.
Hey, quick question for you. Part of the MLS rulings, you have to have some kind of co-op cooperation or compensation in the MLS. Is that just not going to be applicable anymore if the new rule comes into play?
Gone. No visible commissions whatsoever. Listing commission's never been there. The buyer. In fact, I had to stop saying buyer's commission because I want you guys to start using the right word. The broker cooperating compensation will be gone. This what we used to call the CBC, the cooperating broker compensation, will be gone. Jeff, I'd love for you to join me on one of my Monday shows and talk about buyer brokers sometime. I'm going to reach out and have you.
Yeah. I'll put my email. I'll send you my email. I don't have a problem with that. I got trained on this by a guy that he's probably won at least a dozen of these when the buyer flipped on him, and he's been compensated either full compensation based on the buyer broker agreement and or an agreed upon amount.
I have taught buyer brokers every year of my career, and I can't think of one person that adopted it as a procedure.
It's just part of my paperwork. It just flows into my dialogue. My own sister signed one. I mean, it's just part of my paperwork.
I saw that during this last little craziness that people were adding buyer broker agreements to the purchase contract and getting them signed without telling the client what they were,
Yeah, that's a no-no.
Yeah. You can't.
I just sent you my email.
Yeah, I see it there. I'm getting it now.
All right. Anybody else?
And thanks again for putting this together, Stephen.
Oh yeah, man. It's fun. Getting MJ out there.
I do hope you'll think about trying my escrow team. There's no escrow mobile home, Spanish, bulk, nothing we can't do. And whether or not it's my deal, I hope you'll loop me in on solutions, because I often have them for you.
Yeah, I would just, everyone just take her number down, because, there'll come a time when you're going to go, wait a minute, let me give MJ a call. I do it like 10 times a week, but she's probably getting tired of hearing from me.
I would love if you went ahead and booked Jeff let me attend when he does the buyer broker. I'd love to hear. He's quite firm about him, and that's the way you need to be. You can't be hesitant. You have to be quite firm about him. So,
Jeff, what's up? We doing this? You want to?
Sorry, I just stepped back in. I heard my name. What was the question? Whether
you would teach this group. They're trying to pin you down on a date for this group.
Buyer broker.
Oh, just give me some date options. I'll look at my calendar and we'll jump on something.
Does good.
Send it over in an email.
Will do, man.
Yeah.
All
and
right.
I'm sorry, MJ, when do the new forms come out? The 16th?
19th, December 19th.
Oh, 19th.
So when I heard that
So-
that CRMLS update was for brokers and managers, you know,
Yeah.
and when I heard, I thought, oh shoot, there's no wait until January now. So I've got 8 I mean, I'm booking everywhere in the territory, but I'm sneaking around the holidays trying to get it in and for as many as possible before we hit January. So I'm glad.
Yeah, so I'm guessing you'll probably do something after the new form comes out, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't read through it. I obviously don't know the details of it yet.
Yep. If you
Okay.
type into car new forms, all of them will come up and the booklet that I gave you.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll go through the booklet then. Okay, great.
All right. And then I will see here. Hi, Miss Crystal. Nice to see you. I know I've done a little work with Crystal.
All right. Does anybody, you got anything else, MJ, or we good? All right. Thanks for everything. And I'll reach out for the next one. So
All right.
you guys have a good one.
Miss Jeff's class.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll let you in on it. All right.
Well, have a nice day.
All right. Goodbye.